Urban Meyer is possibly one of the greatest head coaches in college football history. In the 17-year career that spanned over colleges like Bowling Green State, Utah, Florida, and Ohio State, Urban Meyer ended up winning 85.4% of his games and won 90% of his games in the 7 years that he was the Ohio State head coach. He took home 3 national championships, 2 with Florida and 1 with Ohio State, and he ended up playing in 15 bowl games as the head coach and taking home 12 of those wins. One of the great things that Urban Meyer had going for him was the fact that he had basically the ability to guarantee any kid coming out of high school that he had the chance to get them to the NFL and have them playing for millions of dollars and possibly even be a top 5 overall draft pick. First round draft picks that were coached under Urban Meyer as a Buckeye include names like Denzel Ward, Jerome Baker, Marshawn Lattimore, Raekwon McMillan, Ryan Shazier, Michael Thomas, Ezekiel Elliott, and many, many more who not only were first round draft picks, but were just draft picks in general and have ended up making a solid contribution in the league. Now, all of these reasons that I've laid out in the past minute of me talking are all reasons as to why many people think that Urban Meyer is a great head coach candidate for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Throw in the fact that they fired Doug Marrone yesterday, and pretty much every single fan in Jacksonville sounds like they want Urban Meyer as their head coach, and it more than likely is going to end up happening. And now with other teams looking at Urban Meyer as being the next head coach of their football team, there are a lot of teams and people around the league that think Urban Meyer is going to be one of the next great head coaches in the league. However, I'm here to tell you that the pros do not outweigh the cons with Urban Meyer when it comes to him being the head coach of the team. And it's a reason as to why I think he would be one of the worst head coaching hires in a while. Now, the first big issue with Urban Meyer as a head coach candidate in the NFL is the obvious controversial issues that went on off the field at Ohio State and Florida. I don't necessarily think I need to go into sheer detail about what happened at both colleges. However, I think everybody pretty much knows about what happened and knows the situation that ended up occurring because of the off-the-field issues. I think both times Urban Meyer had somewhat of a struggle in terms of taking responsibility for those off-the-field actions. And when you're a head coach, not just at the college level, but at the NFL level and at any professional level, you have to be able to take responsibility for some actions that happen off the field. You can't just take responsibility for on-the-field issues. And it seemed like Urban Meyer lacked the ability to take those off-the-field issues as his own responsibility. Whether they were his responsibility or not, as the head coach of a football team, that kind of is his job, is to take somewhat of a responsibility and blame for some of the players, especially considering the fact that he maybe knew about some of the issues with his coaching staff at Ohio State, but maybe he didn't because of an issue that I will actually get into later in the video. Now, the next issue with Urban Meyer, and it's not necessarily an issue that directly involves him, but it's the sheer amount of college coaches that have jumped from the college ranks to the NFL ranks as a head coach, and it never really works out for them. Names like Lou Holtz, Nick Saban, and many, many more are names who have jumped from being head coaches at the college ranks to being head coaches of an NFL franchise, and it just never really works. Lou Holtz was fired after 1 year, Nick Saban was fired after, I believe, 1 or 2 seasons, and next thing you know, they're back in the college ranks as a head coach. Now, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team who is going to be picking first overall this upcoming draft, and a team who was more than likely going to be selecting the face of their franchise at the quarterback position this upcoming draft, cannot have a coach that has somewhat of a high chance of being fired after a couple years, just because of the fact that he's in the same sort of stereotype of a college head coach going to the NFL, and we know how that stereotype works out for these college head coaches. It never really works out for them, and they end up being fired within 1 to 2 seasons. We've seen plenty of guys in their career already who have had many, many different, not only head coaches, but offensive coordinators in their career. You look at guys like Baker Mayfield, you look at guys like Sam Darnold, who's going to be having a new head coach next year. And there's obvious reasons as to why having a young quarterback and having a young team in general like the Jaguars have right now, if there's not a sense of continuity at the highest position, at the head coach position, and with the coaching staff in general, then it's not going to bode well for a young roster that's looking to get their feet in the league. Now, the next thing that I'm going to bring up, and it's something that many people will actually use as a good reason to hire Urban Meyer as a head coach, is the fact of the matter that Urban Meyer has been one of the best recruiters in college football over the past 10 years. And even though he has been very great at that, I don't necessarily think that will translate to the NFL level. recruiting a kid out of high school and guaranteeing him a scholarship or guaranteeing that some of his college tuition will be paid is much different than trying to go out into the open market and sign free agents and convince those free agents that are probably looking for a Super Bowl ring. It's going to be hard to convince all those guys to come to Jacksonville, a team that has been one of the worst teams in the league for pretty much their whole entire franchise history. And not to mention, the brand of Jacksonville as an NFL team does not even compare to the brand of Ohio State as a college football team. The brand at Ohio State is much more known throughout the United States than I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are. And taking those guys on the free agent market, guys who are looking to win a ring, guys who are maybe even looking to earn as much money as possible, even if Jacksonville has the ability to say that they think they can win a ring soon or they have the most money to offer to a free agent, I think the ability to go somewhere else and maybe earn the same wage or earn the same salary and possibly even be able to compete for a ring even more than Jacksonville, I think it's going to be hard for Urban Meyer to really recruit free agents to his team. And even though he's the head coach, he's not necessarily the GM or whatever that's going to have the final say on those issues. He still is the head coach of the team. He's still somebody, he's the one guy that every single player is going to see every single day at practice, on game day, during field session, during training camp. He's going to be the one guy that's seen every day. And if there's any sort of lack of trust between those free agents and Urban Meyer, or whatever lack of, respect or whatever, it's going to hurt the Jaguars at the end because they don't have. It's going to be harder for them to compete with the other 31 NFL teams to get those free agents. And not to mention, there are a lot of coaches in the NFL right now who are offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators, namely guys like Robert Saleh, Eric Bieniemy, Josh McDaniels in New England. Those three guys, in my opinion, are the top three head coach candidates going into the offseason. Even throw in somebody like Brian Daboll, who I think probably should be an offensive coordinator. However, I think even he would be a better option to be the head coach with this Jacksonville Jaguars team because they have proven systems that have proven to be very effective in the NFL already. And we don't necessarily know if Urban Meyer's style of play and how they work on the offense and defense, we don't necessarily know if his ability at the head coaching position is going to work out in the NFL. The first three guys that I mentioned, Eric Bieniemy, Robert Saleh, and Josh McDaniels, all three of those guys are guys who have either been to the Super Bowl in Robert Saleh's case or won multiple Super Bowls in Eric Bieniemy and Josh McDaniels' case. So already those three guys, like I said, are guys who have had a system in place with their given teams and have really flourished with those systems and with the guys that they have. And I think that prospect of having one of those guys coaching in Jacksonville with a young quarterback, possibly in Trevor Lawrence, or whoever they have at quarterback and whoever they have on both offense and defensively, that prospect and that ability, I think, to be a safer head coach hire is much more of a good hire than hiring Urban Meyer, who we don't necessarily know if his style is going to work in the NFL. Now, the last subject is a little bit of a touchy subject when it comes to Urban Meyer, and that is the personal health of Urban as a human. And I would never really want to go online and talk about somebody's health, as it's a very personal issue. And it's something that I think when it first came out about the issues that he was having, even though he was the one that brought up those issues, I think it was a very personal issue to Urban and his family. And having those issues just brought out to the media was maybe a bad decision. However, now that there is the possibility of him being the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think the issue does have to be brought back up because of how stressful this situation is as not just the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach, but a head coach in the NFL, where every single move is scrutinized, whether you're a GM, player, or coach. Every single dollar that you spend is scrutinized. Every single draft pick that's used is scrutinized. Every single roster move is scrutinized. And that necessarily, even though Ohio State might have been a bigger brand than the Jacksonville Jaguars, that's not necessarily always happening at Ohio State, where every single move is scrutinized, because there's a lot more leeway as a college football program. When you're an NFL program and you're in charge of millions and millions and millions of dollars, and you're in charge of millions and millions and millions of fans who love your team, it's going to be a lot more stressful than coaching the Ohio State Buckeyes 5 games of the year in a packed out Ohio State stadium. Compare that to a Jacksonville stadium where if you're not winning games, it doesn't matter if you are an NFL team. People will stop showing up. And people have stopped showing up to Jacksonville Jaguars games already. And that's going to put even more pressure on Urban Meyer because he knows the fans might not be behind him as a team. And that's going to lead him to having even more stress because he's not going to know if he's going to have a job next week. With all of that being said, that's going to be the video for me. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave a like. If you didn't, make sure you leave a dislike. Any feedback from you all at this point is much appreciated. If you're a Jaguars fan, if you're Urban Meyer, if you're anybody watching this video, you disagree or agree with what I'm saying, make sure you leave a comment down below. I try to get back to all of you guys as much as possible. If you're new to my channel, make sure you hit subscribe. If you're one of my returning 63 subscribers, I appreciate you so much. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.